Good Dram Show with me, Chris Goodrum. As per usual, a big thank you to everybody that watched last week's episode of the show, liked, commented, all that kind of stuff. I know there's a fair few comments that I haven't caught up on as yet, but I'll obviously endeavour to do so as soon as I can. Yeah, last week's episode of the show I thought was quite fun, so it was really nice to do a sort of a round-up kind of episode of the show. I had some nice emails from some of the distilleries that I featured. I had a nice one from Patrick at Lockley, and basically saying, well, yeah, I kind of knew that that batch of the cask strength was not going to be up your street, but the next one will be. Oh, that's going to be good. Talking of Lockley, that reminds me that the September tasting in that my employer is what's faffing about going, my employer, Gauntleys. Okay, you know I work for Gauntleys. You know the show has nothing to do with Gauntleys, but I work for Gauntleys. So anyway, so the September tasting will be with Patrick from Lockley, and he'll be introducing the, I don't know whether I'm allowed to say this, I'm assuming I can, the new range that they have created. As a number of you probably know, they used to release the seasonal bottlings, fallow and ploughing and so on and so forth, and they did that for 3 years, three releases, and they thought, well, you know, time for a change, and they've now decided on three. I think it's three. I can't remember. I looked at the email, but didn't really kind of absorb all of it, to be honest with you. Three kind of core bottlings to go alongside the barley bottling. So that the September tasting, which I don't know whether there's any places left actually, so I don't know why I'm bothering to tell you about it. Well, I just thought I might as well do. Is effectively the sort of like the Nottingham launch, if you like, of the range, because I think the global launch will be sort of earlier in the month. But anyway, so if you're booked onto that tasting, it's going to be quite intriguing and a little bit different, and probably not what you're expecting from Lockley, I would imagine. Anyway, on to today's episode of the show. Now, today's episode of the show happened by well, it was a bit of an accident, really. I was digging around in the boxes, and as you know, I've got an inordinate amount of boxes. I was actually looking for the Highland Park samples, so I haven't done a Highland Park episode for years, and I just thought, I'll have a look and see if I've got any. Anyway, I couldn't find a Highland Park sample box, but I found a box that had Ardbeg written on it, and I went, there's going to be no bloody Ardbeg samples in that. I mean, you know, there might be I might have kept some 10-year-old possibly distillery bottling and stuck it in there, but you know, I can't remember the last time an independent bottling company bottled an Ardbeg, let alone sent me a sample. Anyway, so I opened the box, and well, would you believe it? These were in the box. I mean, admittedly, the juices, there's not very much of them, a couple of these bottlings. I did nose them all, and they do seem to be okay. I haven't tasted them for obvious reasons, so they might be, the palates might be a bit shot, I don't know. Now the thing is, I mean, you know, like I said, I can't remember the last time I saw an independently bottled Ardbeg, and even if the current independents did do it, you know, that they wouldn't send out a sample, and not a hope in hell's chance. I mean, back then, I mean, we are talking back, you know, in sort of 2010, 12, etc. The then independent bottling companies of the day were more than happy to send out samples of some really old and rare stuff. You know, they wanted people like myself, you know, to buy them to sort of sell to you guys, but also to review them when I used to do the newsletter. You know, they wanted people to know that they were bottling these kind of incredible whiskies. But nowadays, I mean, as we well know, the gene pool of whiskies and casks to source from is pretty limited. Independents, certainly since the end of or since lockdown, have certainly not sending out samples. So obviously the newer independent bottling companies are, which is quite nice, and so I like to feature them. But the established big players now, you know, the likes of AD Rattray and Duncan Taylor and Hunter Laing, for example, they don't send samples anymore. I mean, occasionally, when the reps sort of realise they haven't bought anything from them in years, may well sort of like cobble together some samples. But as a rule, when back in the day when there was a new set of releases and a nice box would turn up, don't happen anymore. But anyway, that's that's just the way it is these days, you know. So this is an episode of the show that will never be repeated. I kind of could have retasted them all myself and sort of like, you know, sat at the kitchen table and done it and, well, just pleased myself in a manner of speaking. But yeah, I thought it would be nice to kind of share this final flourish, shall we say, with you guys. So as I've done several episodes of the show on Ardbeg in the past, and this will probably be the last one imagines, I'm just going to introduce that. Right, okay, so the first bottling we're going to kick off with is a 15-year-old Ardbeg. So this was bottled in Duncan Taylor's Rare Old range. It was a single bourbon cask, and here's the lovely thing. I mean, all American oak, not a sherry cask inside. I mean, even if just an independent did bottle an Ardbeg these days, you know, it's probably going to be hammered with sherry. I mean, if Duncan Taylor did it, they'd probably do it in their octave range and hammer the damn thing with sherry. Am I being a bit disingenuous? Sorry about that. Anyway, so coming back to this, so it's a single bourbon cask, 1724, distilled in October of 1993, bottled in July of 2009. Yep, that's how old that one is, at 58.9%. Bottling number 2 is an AD Rattray individual cask bottling of Ardbeg. It is 20 years old, a single bourbon cask, 1751, distilled in 1993 and bottled in 2013 at 57.2%. Then we're on to the first of the two Hunter Laing Old and Rare bottlings. This is a 22-year-old. Don't know that the Old and Rare bottlings, as far as I'm aware, didn't come with a cask number or a code or anything like that. They had an internal code, which I've got, which is OAR0231. It was distilled in October of 1993, bottled in February of 2015 at 56.4%. The next Ardbeg is a Mackillop's Choice. It's a real shame that Lorna's has retired now, but I mean, you know, it comes to us all, I suppose. So this was, again, single bourbon cask, 1289, another 21-year-old Ardbeg. No, that was 22. I've got them the wrong way round, but never mind. It doesn't really matter, does it? I kept this bit in. I could have cut it out, I suppose. Anyway, laziness, I think, really. So 21-year-old, it was distilled in September of 1993, bottled in December of 2014 at 54.3%. And the final bottling was interesting. Some of you might remember this. I bought, or shall we say, Gauntlet's bought a bottle or two, I believe, of this particular Old and Rare Ardbeg. Just another 22-year-old, and I decided to sort of crack it open and rebottled it in these 3CL miniatures, so a lot of people could taste them. I mean, to be fair, it was expensive back then. I mean, I hate to think of what it would go for these days at auction, but anyway. So this is OAR0188. It was distilled in March of 1991, bottled in May of 2013 at 53.8%. Now, another interesting thing to note is, apart from the two Old and Rare bottlings, which came in sort of like wooden boxes with a certificate and all that kind of stuff, all the others were just bottled in the standard bottles that the independent bottling companies use. So they were all just no frippery, no nothing. They were just in the normal bottle. Wouldn't happen these days either if they were. I mean, if you were bottling a 22-year-old Ardbeg, decanter, fireworks, the whole bloody shebang, you know, well, you've got to justify, you know, 5 figures, I suppose, or whatever they would charge you for it. But anyway, I'm being a bit cynical today. I think I've obviously got out of bed the wrong side. Anyway, let's just taste some old Ardbeg, shall we? Let's start with the Duncan Taylor 15-year-old. Let's see what the nose gives us on this then, shall we? That's a nice nose. That's still quite fresh, actually. I mean, there wasn't an awful lot in that bottle, so it stood the test of time. it's got that sort of classic, slightly woody, Ardbeg kind of character. A little bit of marmalade, orange marmalade, rubber, fish, really gentle peat. I mean, this is not a peat monster. Obviously, this is dating back to the time when Ardbeg wasn't quite as heavily peated as it is today. I forget what the old peating ppm was, but this is very much more spirit orientated. There's a little bit of manure, a little bit of Parma Violet. I mean, I remember, Bumore was a lot more Parma Violet-y than Ardbeg, but sort of old Ardbeg, old Port Ellen, and yes, I remember old Port Ellen, had that lovely Parma Violet-y kind of note. Some fish oils, a little bit of burnt wood, absolutely stunning. I mean, distillate heavy, gentle peat. The peat is just sitting there in the background. So a woofed? What the hell's a waft of peat? I haven't even had anything to drink yet, and I can't speak. That's just stunning. Absolutely stunning nose. Let's see what that's like. Again, quite woody, barleyed, dry, intense, quite alcoholic. I mean, obviously it's 58%. A little medicinal note kind of coming through on, a little iodine on the finish. Again, the peat is very soft, it's gentle, it's dusty. A little bit of marmalade creeping in there, but the alcohol has made that finish really dry, and it's really salty. It's really emphasised the salt. Let's put a little drop of water, and I mean a little drop because there's not much whiskey left there in the glass. That's become a lot more leafy, a lot more herbal. I'm getting more bog myrtle, a lot more sweeter barley. The peat has really dropped off. It's almost unpeated. I know there was an unpeated Ardbeg once upon a time, Kidalton was it, I believe, which was really interesting. And yes, I got to taste it. I mean, you know, would I get the chance these days? Not a hope. Yeah, so I mean, this is almost unpeated now. Really barleyed, really quite fleshy and fruity, and again it's got that slight woodiness to it, that kind of classic Ardbeg woodiness. Let's see what the pass like that. Again, still quite drying. The tannins are quite dry and quite bitter on the finish now. It's possible that the sample has degraded a little bit over time, but still it's got loads of Parma Violet. Again, very little peat, so with dry barley, almost barley husks. Lovely intensity, really fishy, very fishy, and quite salty as well on the aftertaste. I mean, that is, and still is, and was a stunning bottling of Ardbeg, it has to be said. I mean, oh, lovely one. Let's move on to the 20-year-old AD Rattray. Let's see what the nose gives us on this then, shall we? That is quite phenolic, almost Lefroy-y in that medicinal sort of damp earth and peat and saline. The oak is actually quite chunky and quite big, and there's a lot of vanilla, dark vanilla, quite earthy, coffee, dunnage, really complex, and like I said, quite peated. And although it is from 1993, the same time as the Duncan Taylor bottling, there's a lot more peat, a lot more intensity, a lot more salinity, and coffee. Not quite as woody. Like I said, this is kind of moved more into a Lefroy-y kind of style, and like I said, more medicinal and herbal and bog myrtle-y and nettle-y. Oh, stunning. Not quite salty as well. I wonder whether this spent maybe a little bit more time on the mainland than it did on Islay, possibly. Anyway, let's see what the pass on. Again, quite full, lots of oak, but it's not overpowering. The oak is kind of at the edges, and it has that sort of dark vanilla kind of character, which kind of works in really nicely with the peat and the wood. Again, lots of Lafroigy kind of iodine and seaweed and medicinal peat. Quite fishy on the end. It's got that sort of kippery kind of smoked kippery kind of character. Lovely intensity, real acidity there as well. I mean, it's salt and alcohol and acidity, and oh, it's just that really is quite stunning, it has to be said. Let's put a smidge of water with it and just see what that has. I mean, although it's 57%, I really don't think it actually needs any water. Well, that makes it really more fragrant. I mean, again, like in the previous bottling, the peat has kind of dropped off quite a bit, and I'm getting a lot of the sort of like, you know, citric distillery kind of character. Again, not as woody as I would normally expect, and again it's got that freshness, that more sort of Lafroigy kind of freshness. And there's that touch of Parma Violet as well. Yeah, let's see what it smells like now. The oak is not as dark, it's a little bit more lighter, it's a bit more vanilla, a bit more almost custardy, but not quite custardy. I mean, there's a little bit more woodiness now, so it's a little bit more kind of as I would expect Ardbeg to be, and it's less being Lafroigy. Lovely sweetness, again that Parma Violet note on the finish, quite dry, quite woody, sort of, you know, it's almost kind of peat briquettes on the aftertaste. Again, the peat has kind of dropped off a bit, but it's still there, still noticeable, and that's still a damn good bottle. First of the two old and rare Ardbegs, even though this is 21 and it should have come after this one, but it doesn't really matter, does it, at the end of the day? What's a year between friends? Anyway, so 56.4%. Let's see what the nose was on this end, shall we? It's a little reserved. I mean, it might have suffered a bit from the time that the sample has been sort of in my possession, but quite woody again, but it's more cedary, more camphory, quite herbal, quite rich, dense. I mean, look at the colour of that. I mean, you know, that is a lovely colour. And there is quite a bit of oak there as well, but again it's that sort of darker vanilla, and it's kind of not impinging, it's kind of, as oak should do, yeah, it's playing a supporting role. A little bit of barbecue smoke, soy sauce possibly, so got that nice savoury note. Not getting the Parma Violets, which is quite interesting. So this is from 1991. Rather than sort of 93 like the previous twos. Yeah, so it's a kind of, it's more sort of like modern Ardbeg, I suppose. But again, it's got quite a sort of like a real chunkiness. It's a fabulous nose, it has to be said. I mean, it's got some lovely peat, but again, it's all just really balanced, and it's not over peated. It's not a peat monster. There's some you know, distillery character, some spirit character, and it's harmony. It's all about the harmony. It's you know, back then they weren't chasing the huge ppms. Anyway, let's see what that's like. Classic woody Ardbeg, really woody, really tannic, really dry. Again, camphor. Iodine, really chewy, big chewy peat, rather than chewy backer. Really quite dry on the finish. The alcohol is kind of really masking that finish, it's chopped it off quite a bit. Almost kind of peaty, chocolatey kind of finish. I mean, I love that. I mean, that's really good. I mean, that's again classic woody old Ardbeg, and let's see what a little drop of water is going to do to that. oh, that's brought out that Seville orange marmalade. That's sort of a bit like the first bottling, a bit like the Duncan Taylor, with that sort of marmalade-y kind of note coming out. But again, it's retained that sort of dark woodiness. More smoky now rather than overtly peated. But still, oh, that's a hell of a nose. Let's see what that's like that. Still quite dry, still quite woody, but now that luscious marmalade-y note is coming out on the palate, and it's old marmalade, dark marmalade. It's got a lovely sweetness to it, but the saltiness is there, sort of balancing. The brine is there. It's just, oh, absolutely gorgeous. There's a little smokiness now on the finish, a sort of smoked barbecue note coming through. Wow, I mean, that is lingering. I mean, that really is lingering. That is just a stunning bottling, it has to be said. So let's move on to the Mackillop's Choice Ardbeg. So another one from 1993, 21 years old. Let's see what the nose gives us on this then, shall we? Okay, so we're kind of, again, we're more back towards the Duncan Taylor style. Really fresh, really salty, really fishy, ozone, iodine, medicinal peat, a little bit like us. It's a kind of like somewhere between the Auld Rattray and the Duncan Taylor bottling. A little bit of barley, some creamy oak, clotted cream, manure. Oh, I love this. It's got that kind of slightly decomposing rose petal note underneath, and it's becoming really manure-y now. I mean really manure-y. I mean, this is just evolving, and this is one of these wonderful whiskies that just does that. I mean, you know, I love whiskies that sort of just lead you in and kind of feed you a bit more. Oh, that's lovely. A little bit of pepper now. Yeah, I mean, Laing picked some stunning casks, it has to be said. I mean, I don't think I ever tasted a bad bottling. I mean, there was one or two that I would maybe not hugely fussed about of his, that, and they all had some serious age. I mean, he didn't bottle any of these kind of like 5 and 6 year old whiskies. Oh no, you know, that was not his kind of bag. And oh, let's see what that's like. Again, quite woody, but not as woody as, say, the Old and Rare bottling. Quite masked in actual fact. The alcohol, although only 54%, does kind of punch above its weight. So it's kind of a bit peat and salt and fish and alcohol on the palate with a bit of woodiness. Little medicinal note, little manure as well. It certainly needs a little drop of water to open it up, and I think I've just put a little drop in there, so let's see what the nose gives now. Yeah, okay, so that has kind of lightened the nose a little bit. Not quite, well, I say it's not as fresh, it's more oily. It's certainly brought out the natural oiliness. Not as woody. Again, we're in that sort of style similar to the Duncan Taylor and the Auld Rattray. I think the sample has suffered a little bit, but it's still pretty damn good, it has to be said. Let's sort of pass on. Yeah, I don't think the sample has kind of held up, to be honest with you. But, I mean, it still shows some lovely oiliness, some barley. The peat has kind of pretty much dissipated. As a nice kind of meatiness, although it's not kind of smoked meat, barbecue meat, it's more of an impression of meat and an impression of weight and juiciness. Like I said, I think the sample has suffered a little bit, but certainly without water it was a bloody good Ardbeg. Okay, so on to the final bottling. So this is the 22-year-old Old and Rare from 1991. Let's see what the nose gives us on this thing, shall we? Oh, it's a little bit reserved, but really aromatic. I mean, what was that? I was kind of peach and apricot and pineapple. It's almost tropical. This is kind of like a, this should have been, bottled as the tropical Ardbeg. Lovely sweetness to the nose, sweet oak, sweet peat, bog myrtle, a little bit of iodine, some fishiness, some salt underneath there. Not so much vanilla oak. Again, the oak is quite sort of restrained and kind of acting as a support sort of structure. Nicely herbal, really not kosher. It does take. It's taking a while to open up. It has to be said, and it's not quite as woody as the previous Old and Rare bottling. It's a lot lighter. Yeah, that's a slightly different side to Ardbeg, I think. And this has been, I think, the most intriguing thing about it is that some of the bottlings, like the other Old and Rare bottling, have been almost kind of textbook sort of woody kind of Ardbeg. Some have been sort of slightly different. And this is the lovely thing about single cask bottlings. And again, this is not a huge peat monster. It's delicately peated in inverted commas. Let's sort of pass on. Oh my god, the finish on that was just stunning. I mean, that doesn't need any water. I mean, that's beautiful. That's soft, that's juicy. Again, we've got that kind of slight marmalade-y character. Lovely sort of sweet peat, sweet oak, a little bit of salt, citrus, camphor. Speechless. I mean, that was a stunning bottling, and I mean, almost kind of lost for words, and it was. That's why I kind of decanted it into sort of smaller bottles, because basically I wanted people to sort of taste this whiskey because it was just sublime. It just blew me away, and it's still blowing me away now. And I knew I had to do something with it, and it was. I remember having them on the shelf, and it was just sort of like, you love your peated whiskey, you buy this. I mean, they were expensive. They were hideously expensive for a little 3CL, but oh my god, I mean, just absolutely stunning. Doesn't need any water at all. I mean, it was what, 53.8, and it is just sublime. It's just perfect. I could just go on about that all day, but we've got a little bit of it left for later. Okay, so let's come to today's episode of the show. Firstly, a big thank you to Mackillop's Choice and Hunter Laing and AD Rattray and Duncan Taylor for the samples for today's episode of the show. Like I said, if they were bottling these now, they would not be sending them out as samples, I can tell you that for now. But back in the day, they did, and I am so glad they did. Loved the Duncan Taylor bottling. I mean, it had that lovely kind of old-fashioned Ardbeg, insofar of not necessarily the woody style of Ardbeg, but that kind of lighter peat, the aromatic. It was sort of like light, had that lovely Palmer Violet sort of Bamori kind of character, although not as sooty as Bamor. It was just absolutely stunning. I mean, really lovely whiskey. And the AD Rattray bottling was pretty damn good as well. I mean, even though it was kind of had this kind of Lefroy-y kind of character going on, it was more medicinal, it was more iodine, it was more pungent, but again, it was just a really stunning Ardbeg, and just different. And again, like I said, harking back to the time before the sort of like the mountains of peat. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with modern Ardbeg. I love modern Ardbeg. I love a lot of peat, but it's just nice to see where it once was, because a lot of people will never have known Ardbeg, before the sort of, the rebirth of it, shall we say. Anyway, the first of the two Old and Rare Ardbegs, pretty much textbook Ardbeg, as we said. It had that lovely kind of sort of woodiness of character. It was lots and lots of spices and cedar and camphor and that kind of thing, and it was just a really, really good bottling of Ardbeg. The Mackillop's choice, like I said, alright, the sample had suffered a little bit, I will hold my hand up and say that, but nevertheless it still displayed a lot of the things that I loved about that bottling, and the fact that it was kind of somewhere between the first two, somewhere between the sort of the delicate, in inverted commas, Duncan Taylor bottling and the more Lefroy kind of AD Rattray bottling, and it was somewhere between the two, it has to be said, and still absolutely gorgeous. And the final Old and Rare bottling, I mean, that was just heavenly. I mean, that was just a gorgeous cask of Ardbeg. They broke the mould when they did that one, I can tell you that for a start. And it had that lovely classic marmalade-y sort of Seville orange marmalade, sweetness of sweet pea. I mean, it was just to die for. It's the stuff that you just, I don't think you come across these days at all. It has to be said, it was a relic of days gone by, and certainly I'd never get the chance to taste them again, but some of you might do, but because you may well have deep pockets. But anyway, that's this week's episode of the show in the bag. I hope you've enjoyed this kind of trip down memory lane. And, you know, at the end of the day, I know kind of Ardbeg sort of annoyed an awful lot of people with this kind of their marketing style, and the fact that, you know, nobody can actually buy a bottle of their... I mean, who buys their bloody committee bottlings now? I mean, once upon a time I used to do that. I used to sort of log on, buy it, brilliant. Unless you're there kind of like, you know, 2 minutes after midnight, you don't get a chance. I mean, who the hell buys them all anyway? But anyway, you can argue about all that at the end of the day, and all that kind of, you know, marketing malarkey that they indulge in, and but, you know, the spirit is just sublime. And old Ardbeg from that period of time is just even better. Anyway, I could keep waffling for hours and hours on end, but I've got to obviously edit this episode of the show. So all that's left to say is I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the show. Good dramming and good afternoon.